Greetings. This is part 2 of this series where I do greet you reptilians and you wicked and evil men, women, and children. And I say shalom to you who do believe, you human beings that do believe. And I'm about to issue proof that Enoch did speak of me, which I brought out in the part 1. And it showed in chapters 103 and 104 specific things to look for as we read this and see how they, the authorities, cover up for each other, how they protect each other, how they abuse their official capacity, their official elected office. They abuse it, they obstruct justice, they obstruct judgment. They obstruct everything. They're in the RICO violations, they're frauds, they file aggravated perjuries, and it's all right. They could file a cause against a member of the 144,000 or even others out there because they have excitement now, their delinquency, that they've showed toward any due process. And getting away with it at the root levels. No wonder this country's like it is. It's craziness, and we need to cry out for judgment, as Enoch said. But once again, we're going to skim through this, hopefully pretty quick. Just a quick overview, which you could see in the other video, but if you've already watched it and you need to get caught up on date with this, what's taking place here is there was a judgment that was placed after I proved misappropriated public and federal funds were used to file a known fraud in the court, so that each of those 10 plaintiffs that sued me could acquire from your tax dollars use as personal seed money to go ahead and each increase in excess of $10,000 each from me and exemplary damages. And then they wanted me in prison for 10 years because they perpetuate a fraud, and I prove the whole thing, the entire matter, right from the very start. And please do notice one thing in particular is my address is 700 Virgil. I've never made a claim, and you'll see in here an affidavit that I offer my very life if they could just prove their cause of action. But the judge wouldn't let them prove their cause of action. I had to go to the Attorney General of the state of Texas to get the city to adhere to the Public Information Act. They refuse to do it. They come up with lies and everything else because they know they're liars. And you'll see in this here testimony that I'm giving, because this is testimony on the court record. And I paid, I can't remember, $300-400 for this here document. And of course they burned them up in my house later on. But the thing is, you'll see the corruption of these courts. And you'll see what Enoch wrote about me in detail in here, which resulted in my murder. But what they did was at the end of the alleged trial, when the judge had the plaintiffs write up a judgment, it was a pre-judgment kind of thing. I forget the name of it, but they'll send you the judgment and you look it over to see if it's, fits form and is correct and true and all that stuff, which I did. And I said, that's fine. Well, what they did with that, not preordained, but it's, you look at it and just check it out. Then they're supposed to write up what we agreed on and send it to the parties. What they didn't do was write what we agreed on. They forged it. They completely altered it. to where they got benefits from me to have records and such expunged from the record. So I simply billed them and sued them because they never sent me a copy of it. Not until it was way after the period where the judge had lost his plenary jurisdiction. I put a challenge of jurisdiction in prior to his plenary actions being terminated in the matter. Before that, which means everything after a challenge to jurisdiction is filed in the record, everything stops. All judgments, they can't make another one. And they can't hold you to the judgments that were prior to it either, because you're challenging the jurisdiction. In the court itself, this 104th District Judicial District Court cannot prove its own jurisdiction. They have to go to the higher court. That's why we have higher courts. But they never did prove they had jurisdiction. So then I billed all 10 of these, and I think it wasn't $1 billion each, as they try to imply. It was like combined as $1 billion, and the judge himself was named in that billing as well, which they didn't answer, and therefore, because they didn't answer, they agreed to it. That's their own court rules, and it's in the record of the court, as you'll see right here as I read this. So with that out the way, I'm going to try to keep things down as low as I can, low key, and read about kind of how I would have been talking, and my simile of what they sound like. Anyway, this is the Reporter's Record, Volume 1 of 1 volume, Trial Court Cause Number 23075B in the District Court, Texas State Court, 104th Judicial District, Taylor County, Texas. The title, the subject matter that we're going to show in this here from what I filed, this is what I filed my motion under. Motion to challenge jurisdiction and objection to partiality shown to known felons. And I filed this with the judge. Just the last trial, I believe, he had got up and ran away. He locked himself in his chambers because of what I told him. So I came back to make sure that he heard it extra loud, and it's filed in the record. In fact, this was printed up by Julie R. Campbell, RMR, and that's the 104th District Court. And I believe the phone number might still be valid. It's 325-674-1313. And you can call them and ask them about these things and why they don't have laws in Texas that they uphold in the courts. But this is a motion to challenge jurisdiction and objection to partiality shown to known felons. On the 28th day of August 2009, the following proceedings came to be heard in the above-styled and numbered cause before the Honorable Lee Hamilton, Judge presiding, held in Abilene, Taylor County, Texas. Proceedings reported by machine shorthand. Then it just shows the appearances. Then it shows your little bit of a table of contents, I guess you can say. And I'm sorry if this is a little bit foggy. I can't get it any better as far as the way the print looks, because I can't click on this to do anything to the document. That it is an official document. And it says proceedings, August 28, 2009. Motion to challenge jurisdiction and objection to partiality shown to known felons. 3:05 p.m. Open court. Counsel and Mr. Hawkins present. The court. Okay. Great afternoon. Please be seated. This is cause number 23075B. The matter before the court this afternoon is a motion to challenge jurisdiction and objection to partiality shown to known felons. This pleading was filed on July 10th and was signed by Al-Yahnai Hawkins. And how, says the movement. Are you ready, Mr. Hawkins? Mr. Hawkins, which is me, yes, sir. Now, please keep in mind what the matter of our being in the court to begin with is over, and how they escape on something that had never even been filed in the court, but they used it as a precedent so they could run out of there and try to close things down. But I still have this. They've never, proved that they had jurisdiction to show partialities to known felons or any of the other things that I show in this motion. So I say, yes, sir, the court. Okay, and how says the City of Abilene? Mr. Smith says, City of Abilene is ready, Your Honor. The court, and Mr. Hawkins, you may proceed. So I start. I say, I hope you don't mind if I just stay seated, sir. And the court, that would be fine. Mr. Hawkins, me. All right, sir. Did you read my motion, and did you read the memorandum to the motion that I filed? The court, I read the motion, and the motion is 4 pages long. And you referred to a memorandum? I said, yes, sir, which was filed on August 5th and goes with this motion. I didn't see no sense filing a memorandum with it at the time, Your Honor, because I figured that if you weren't going to hear it, there was no sense in me wasting my time in typing the paper and all that. Judge says, you filed a document? You call it a memorandum? Of course, I say, yes, sir. Of course, says, okay, you filed it on August 5th? I said, yes. Memorandum and judicial notice. The court, well, I see a document which reads affidavit of truth, true bill, and a public notice that was filed on August 5th. I said, yes, this was. All this here, and I was showing him with the packet, all this here, Your Honor, these exhibits were filed with it or attached to this memorandum. Judge says, bailiff, can you assist me, please? Why don't you? Do you have a copy of what you're referring to, Mr. Hawkins? I said, this is the only copy I have with me, sir, because I did file it. The judge says, let me just look at it and try and see if I got that document in the court file. I mean, when he rendered the judgment, he was going through the stack like this and bleeding things off and saying this and just reaching and like he was reading right from it. But when I told him where the document is, he can't find nothing. Half the court time just about was, him looking for these court papers that I had just filed. Because they have predetermined judgments, they call it, where they already got your judgment written out. And I found that out. I told about it in a different video where I found out that they had filed a matter into a federal district court that I didn't even know about. They forged my name. They forged my then wife's name in the documents to file so that I would lose, and they could use that in this court matter. Saying, oh, well, he's already had it tried twice. It's double jeopardy. I didn't do it. So I took the document up because my wife's name wasn't Ann, and that's what the signature was Ann Fountain at the time. Notarized. And, of course, there was no record of that notary with the state. When I called, the secretary, the treasury there, they didn't know. They never heard of her. So anyway, he's talking here. He says, well, anyway, at the end, I went up there to show him the document, the court case that was just presented to me, and I had him file in the record because I want everything filed in there. They bring it into court. I want it in there as evidence. Don't care what it is. Kleenex, I want it in the record. And I went ahead and I brought up that court case to show him the forgeries. And he's like, oh, trying to get his predetermined judgment shoved up underneath the thing. I say, that's one thing I didn't know, why you're not supposed to approach the bench suddenly. So let that be a lesson to you. They don't want to hide their predetermined judgments. They don't want you to see what's up there on the bench with them. So then we got the bailiff handing document to judge. Court, can you return that to him? Bailiff, handing document to Mr. Hawkins. The court, Mr. Hawkins, I have read your motion and challenged the jurisdiction. I did not see this memorandum in judicial notice. So I said, it should have been right in front of the affidavit of truth, a true bill, and a public notice. Court, yeah, it's not in front of that. Those documents, it's behind. So I said, could we maybe get a copy of this made here, sir, and we can get it to you? So the judge says, no, it's in the court file. I say, oh, okay. The court says, yeah, it's in the court's file, but I just haven't seen it. Let me, did you give a copy of this memorandum and judicial notice to the city of Abilene? Yes, sir, says I. Court, okay. I said I filed everything with everybody that's involved. Court says, let me take a moment and look at this. Mr. Hawkins, me, says, all right, and they have recessed from 3:08 to 3:21 for the judge to read it. Then they open the court again. The court says, thank you, please be seated. Okay, I have reviewed the memorandum and judicial notice, and Mr. Hawkins, you may proceed. So now please pay particular attention to the things that I say and I bring out right to this judge who had been part of a $1 billion billing. And he's sitting as a magistrate over a court that I'm suing him for over $1 billion, him and the others, severally or individually. And I say, all right, sir. I'd first like to start out with a little background about things concerning the case. What brought this case about? In 1989, February 27, the middle of winter, the city of Abilene came to my property with bulldozers and a demolition order for the wrong address. They ordered my pregnant wife and myself off our property. They bulldozed everything we owned, 2 brand new houses. They left us in the winter, no place to go. I just quit my business, or my job to take care of my business, that they demolished and removed totally. They didn't have any search warrant. They didn't have any seizure warrants. They took everything we owned and put us in the snow. Since then, I was told by the city in one of their papers that if I went against what they were saying, I could go ahead and go to an appellate court. So what I do is I file in the district court, and they laughed it out because there was no court before that. So they basically gave me false information on how to conduct legal business. And ever since that time, Your Honor, I've been filing different contracts with them, trying to make them pay for what they had demolished without a reason, without a cause. It wasn't even condemned. If it was condemned and they bulldozed our house, then it's an obligation of the city to put us up into a place for where we could live for up to 5 years if we were living in a condemned structure. There was nothing condemned, so I fell right through the cracks on that. My wife and I ended up living out of an abandoned school bus, scared that Child Protective Services was going to come down and take our unborn child once it was born because we had nothing for them to live in. We filed different contracts to where I was telling them what they owed me for the laws that they broke against me, everything else. They never answered. So under Texas Rules of Civil, or Texas Civil Practice and Remedies Code, Chapter 18, it does state that for necessity of cost or whatever, If they don't answer within 14 days, then they admit to it and they do owe it. According to the statutes of Texas, it's a law that they have to abide by. I also had default judgments placed upon it, certificate of default, and the defendants filed it into the record. So it's in the record, okay? Now, what had transpired after that was 10 plaintiffs. The City of Abilene, Sharon E. Hicks, T. Daniel Santini. I go down through the plaintiffs I had already read. And then Richard Sullivan individually, the fellow that actually burned my house down. Then he came down with a demolition order for 600 Virgil and bulldozed my property at 700. So with that little recap, I'll start reading up here at the top of page 6 after mentioning Richard Sullivan individually. It's been a long time since I read this much. But I can't stop. I've got to get this out tonight because I got the part 1 out. Just in case, you know, I get suicided, you all need to know that I don't commit suicide, okay? If I die, that's marvelous. I got no problem with it, but I'm not going to commit suicide. So I'm speaking and I say, to the court, and it's full of people. Now, Richard Sullivan, the reason he was listed was because I had stated in the Board of Public Standards Committee meeting that he came on my property and burned down my house. And it upset him greatly. He's the one that signed the demolition order to have my property removed from me because it upset him that they found him out. Back in the early 70s or later 70s, early 80s, the city had on the docket what they wanted to do was build a second Lytle Shores. Lytle Shores 2, using man-made lakes paid by city funds. That they would later put high-dollar houses around, selling it off so that nobody could have access to the lakes that their taxpayer dollars had bought. So they burned down my house, or burned my house down instead of talking to me. The neighbors around the area, they had talked to about buying their property, but my piece of property, it landlocked, and they got land lot, L-O-T, and it was supposed to be L-O-C-K-E-D. My land, it landlocked 26 acres where they had back flooded that old black area I had told you about in the previous video. And they kicked them off their land, bulldozed everything they had, declared it a flood zone, gave them pennies instead of dollars for their property because they had in the makings this very thing I told you all about. And some didn't believe me, but I'm telling you, it's filed in the record. They owe, and you'll see. But it landlocked 26 acres instead of them making any deals with me. This is the way they dealt with me, so I filed in my contracts with them the billings that I had sent in. And what they did instead was they got together, and as they show in what I had sent you, it was by Carolyn Foster. It's dated July 21st, 2003. And she emphatically states, as I understand your allegations in these documents, you are alleging that there was violation of due process arising out of the city demolition of buildings on your property located in the 700 block of Virgil. That was exactly read right from the letter that she had sent because I had sent her the bills that they were trying to duck. And then she says, I'm saying, now please keep in mind that date, Your Honor. It's July 21st, 2003 that she sent the letter. Right after they had bulldozed my property, I went down and Exhibit E, that's with your packet, March 17, 1989, where I had a different letter there. And I was saying I went down and I saw Mindy Manson. I was all in preparation for this, this very court day. It's been a 20-year preparation for this day. And she says, to whom it may concern, East Lot so-and-so. The above referenced tract of land generally located in the 700 block of Virgil. So you got Mindy Manson here saying 700 block of Virgil, and that was on March 17, 1989, that I own 700 Virgil. And once again, up here's a letter the 21st of 2003. So in 89 they admitted it. She admitted it in her letter of July 21st, 2003, that I own 700 Virgil. So I further here and I say, you also have Carolyn Foster that did sign this, okay? The letter dated July 21st, 2003, saying she understood it was over 700 block of Virgil, right there, okay? So what they did was then they got together and they conspired. It's a big conspiracy where you got 10 plaintiffs all wanting to use misappropriated public funds, which I already showed, and they decided they wanted to launch a lawsuit. Exhibit I shows where Sharon Hicks had talked to the city reporters, talking about the Abilene City Reporter News, where I had showed in other videos the article that would have been lost because the City of Abilene Reporter News took my article out of the archives, and if it wasn't for Occult Research Corporation or whatever, it would have been lost forever. But that's what this is referring to, is also this article that they published in the paper to start the fraud, to file the fraud in a court known to be a fraud, with the judge helping the defendants to win, wanting first the money, but after what I proved, you'll see what they did. It says you also have let me see, Exhibit I shows where Sharon Hicks had talked to the city reporters, and she had mentioned in here, it says, this dispute. And this also is July 26, 2003. This was July 21st, which was the newspaper thing. This newspaper article was written on the 26th. So they had the letter from the 21st saying that I owned 700 Virgil. That's what the problem I was having was over, was 700 Virgil. And that was in a letter on the 21st of July. On the 26th, 5 days later, here it shows this is and she states here, even though it says 700 Virgil where she signed, certified it, because her signature, according to the Texas Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 13 states that a signature on any document that's filed into a proceeding is a certificate that they have done due diligent research and everything else, and that what they've put there is truth. You yourself, Your Honor, you're supposed to take it as if it were truth and filed in good faith. But it wasn't. That's why we're here today. Anyway, in the newspaper article, it says, the dispute stems from the 1989 demolition of Fountain's house at 600 Virgil Street. That's what the newspaper said 5 days before. The lady had her signature on a letter saying they knew and understood it to be 700. So they filed the lie right here in the newspaper, and then they carry it over into this court case. Anyway, in the newspaper article, it says the dispute stems from 1989 demolition of Fountain's house at 600 Virgil Street. 1989, Mindy Manson said 700. Just 3 days prior or so, 5 days prior, July 21st, Carolyn Foster, the assistant city attorney, said she understood it was over 700 Virgil. Now, Miss Hicks gets in the paper and says 600 Virgil. And also makes the statement that says most of the city's vehicles, police cars, Hicks said, which would be difficult to steal. So now I'm wanting to steal police cars after they bulldoze my house unlawfully. I came into your court, Your Honor, and I spoke to you and I told you, I says, Your Honor, and I even made an affidavit and I put it on eBay. But they kicked it off eBay because they said I was trying to bring criminal activities to eBay because I had stated that you could blow my brains out with a bailiff's gun if you, or it says, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye, if any flesh and blood man or woman living on the planet Earth. Judge interrupts me, says, excuse me, Mr. Hawkins. When anyone is reading a document out loud, they have a tendency to read faster than they would normally speak. So I say, okay, Your Honor. And he says, and the court reporter is over here trying to take down everything. So when you're reading a document, try to read it at a conversational speed, okay? I says, all right, sir, I apologize. And he says, really nice, no problem. No problem. So then I start reading from the very affidavit. Now, this particular affidavit, my friends, I hung up in the foyer of the city hall. It was filed after hanging there. I forget how many days, 4 days, 3 days, 4 days, something like that, maybe a week. And I had them file it into the documents in the county records, because I had it hanging up there, so now I could file it in the county records, and they certified that, you know, everything was done properly. And from there, I put it up into the court here. So they tried to sue the poor, you know, I think she was a county clerk. They were suing her so that they could have what I have filed in the records expunged, taken out. So they were suing her. Well, after like the first time that we went into the courtroom, they kind of like shut that down. Yeshua let me know what to say and do. That was all there was to it. She wasn't part of the deal anymore. But anyway, I've got the actual affidavit in my hand. And he's got copies of it he's looking at, because it was in part of that packet. So I say, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. If any flesh and blood man or woman living on planet Earth or any being in the heavens can prove that I, Al-Yahnai Fountain Hawkins, a.k.a. Alan Douglas Fountain, ever owned 600 Virgil Street, Abilene, Texas, or that I have ever made any claim to any damages that arose from any demolition of that 600 Virgil Street on or about February 27, 1989, as is fraudulently filed causes of action before the court, a known fraud that your tax dollars paid for. Then the Honorable Judge of the 104th District Court, Taylor County, Texas, may take the bailiff's gun and me out to the driveway and blow my brains out across the parking lot of the Taylor County Courthouse located on Oak Street, Abilene, Texas. Now, I stated that way back then, Your Honor, because what their cause of action was all things that arose over 600 Virgil. And I've stood before you. I've written affidavits. I put them on eBay. Nobody's listened to me. Remember what Enoch said? Nobody's listened to me. They don't want to hear or see me. I never owned 600 Virgil. So when I stood in the court and I said this to you, as they prepared, what you allowed them to do, Your Honor, was amend the pleadings, their original complaint, wherein they thought, and I knew the last time I was here, Your Honor, but I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want the claim dismissed. I knew it was going to come about. But what they did when they first started this is you've got 10 affidavits, because you have to have affidavits in order to go with the original complaint. Now you got Carolyn Foster on July 21st, 2003, saying she understands it arose over 700 Virgil. You got the City of Abilene, 1989, Mindy Manson, saying, I owned 700 Virgil. 10 affidavits was filed. This was an affidavit of David M. Wright. He says right here, I am familiar with the allegations made by Al-Yahnai Fountain Hawkins, formerly known as Alan Douglas Fountain, alleging that the City of Abilene is indebted to him for over $1 billion arising out of a demolition of property located in the 600 block of Virgil. Now this was notarized, Your Honor. This is notarized. This man under oath, after already understanding the 21st of July 2003 that it was 700 Virgil, and that was dated July 21st, 2003. Now, just a couple months later, the 2nd of September 2003, you got Mr. Wright saying it's over 600 Virgil. Why? There's no way to defend. Everything I brought before you, Your Honor, you dismissed because it had nothing to do with the cause of action. I brought you a water bill for 700 Virgil. I brought you an electric bill for 600 or for 700 Virgil. You kicked it out because it had nothing to do with the fraud that they were bringing in. Now that was David Wright. You have Sharon E. Hicks, the head city attorney, sitting right here in the big block here where he's got his deck there with a witness stand and all. It says property located in 600 block of Virgil. Now, why did she say that? Because 5 days after she went ahead and had this letter sent by her assistant, Sharon Hicks put in the newspaper 600 Virgil to start this fraud, a thing I couldn't defend on. So you've got Sharon E. Hicks also, Your Honor, that signed. We've got T. Daniel Santee II, which I believe is now the head city attorney, a public, officially he's a public servant, and he should be held at a higher standard than this. For these people who come against me in such a way, Your Honor, in your court to allow it, it's totally unacceptable. Especially when it says right here with T. Daniel Santee, 600 block of Virgil. Then you got Megan R. Santee, 600 block of Virgil, all notarized. They signed under oath, Your Honor, that this was true. You had no idea. You had to believe these people. You've got, what, 10 plaintiffs against me? Most of them were city attorneys or the help in the office. We got the entity City of Abilene, can't breathe or walk or anything, but it's also here. And that's where Mr. Wright signed for it. Now we've got Patricia Aldridge, 600 block Virgil. Now why were they doing this? They use and misappropriate, and I didn't say A, they use misappropriated funds to file this. It wasn't even their own money. They used your tax dollars and his and hers and mine and all these war vets and everybody else. They took their tax dollars and they bulldozed my houses first because, you know, Mr. Sullivan was a little upset that I told him and he burnt my house down, but he never denied it. And then, like Carolyn Foster said, now this is the real clincher, Your Honor, July 21st, 2003. She signed this on the 3rd day of September 2003. What made her change her mind, Your Honor? When she said she understood my problem, we're over here, right here, 700 block of Virgil, but in her affidavit, Your Honor, it says 600 block of Virgil. Then we got Charlene Edmondson. Oh, by the way, Charlene Foster. After we had her on the witness stand and I showed that she committed aggravated perjury in your court, and I asked the bailiff to take her and put her in jail, and I asked you to have your bailiff do it, and we all stood around like, and then we got moved on to something else, right? Right after that, Your Honor, she ended up resigning and fleeing because she knew what was coming. And we've got Carolyn SIC Edmondson, 600 block Virgil. We got Kimberly Barr, which is also notary protest or notary public. And she actually did notary work in some of these things because they were conspiring together to each make in excess of $10,000 or more from me because they filed this fraud using misappropriated public funds, your tax dollars and mine. Kimberly Barr State 600 block of Virgil. I mean, look at all these high officials, all after a little old guy like me. I had to come in here pro se because there ain't an attorney that would touch this. We got Rosetta Priest, 600 block of Virgil. Richard Sullivan, 600 block of Virgil. 10 affidavits, Your Honor, that they used in their cause of action. They thought that they got away with it because, I'm sorry, they thought they got away with it because the court was very lenient. They wouldn't make, the court wouldn't make them or compel them to bring forth any evidence whatsoever of 1600 Virgil. So I had to wait. I had given public information notices that I wanted information specifically on 600 Virgil. Now, this was a letter that was written February 10, 2004, showing, it says, I have been advised that you've been attempting to obtain information from Mike Sexton at the Abilene, Taylor County, 911 District regarding 600 Virgil Street. Your request appears to be related to the pending lawsuit styled City of Abilene, so on and so forth. Please be advised that due to pending litigation, any request for any information from the City of Abilene regarding any matters related to the pending litigation must be made through the discovery process under the Texas Rules of Civil Procedure. Okay, so I did it. So I have been asking them during the litigation, hey, who owns 600 Virgil? I keep asking it in the court, who owns it? Whenever I bring up my electric bill or whatever, they kick it out because it has nothing to do with 600 Virgil, but then they don't want to prove that 600 Virgil even exists. But get this. This is how flamboyant they are with protecting each other. I want to know the tax records. I want to see the deeds. I want to see a water bill, a utility bill. Show me 600 Virgil. They refused me. They even found out I was trying to get it through Mike Sexton, which is a county public servant, their city. And somehow they found out and they put a stop to my request. Now then, it was only a couple days later that they answered interrogatories for me. That was on February 10th. This here was the 13th of February 2004. We're talking 3 days later, they answered these interrogatories. Now, I had asked them in the interrogatories, and this shows that it was, groundless and without foundation. And it was frivolous and brought with the intent just to hurt me. I asked my first question. What address is shown on the demolition order dated February 27, 1989, sent to Alan D. Fountain that was to be demolished? Their answer was objections. This is the plaintiff speaking back and says, plaintiffs object to this interrogatory, or plaintiffs object to this interrogatory in that it seeks information that is irrelevant to the cause of action before the court. Irrelevant to the cause of action before the court. 600 Virgil is irrelevant to the cause of action before the court. That's on line 21 there, page 14. Now that's what the whole cause of action was over, Your Honor, was 600 Virgil. That's why they brought this, because they knew they could push it through this court. I'd be taken down because they got no evidence. There's nothing I could do over 600 Virgil. It doesn't exist. I told you 1,000 times it was a fairy tale. I even told you, Your Honor, I says, what you're trying to do is resurrect Pinocchio. It don't work. It doesn't exist. You can't make Pinocchio come back to life. He's a wooden doll. You're trying to make 600 Virgil come about. And then they said, is not reasonably calculated to lead to discovery of admissible evidence and is for the purpose of harassing the plaintiffs. Additionally, the interrogatory seeks information that is equally available to defendant Hawkins. I mean, can you believe this? This came 3 days after a letter that they said they wouldn't give me any information about 600 Virgil because it's in litigation. So they answer my interrogatories telling me that this information is equally available. They're aggravated perjurers. They need to be in prison. Now, Your Honor, I just showed you on February 10th. They told me, oh, you can't have this information. It's during litigation. Answer to the interrogatories here, Your Honor, and they're telling you, Your Honor, the court and the people of this state, they're saying, additionally, the interrogatory seeks information that is equally available because I asked for it in the interrogatories. Now they had to sign this under oath, this interrogatory under oath, showing that these things were true and correct. That answer wasn't true. The letter right here shows it wasn't. My next question, not next, but it was question number 9, interrogatory number 9. Who was the owner of 600 Virgil Street, Abilene, Texas, on February 27, 1989? First, they object to exceeding 25 questions. But then they say, additionally, plaintiffs object to this interrogatory in that it seeks information that is irrelevant to the cause of action before the court. 600 Virgil is the cause of action. And they're saying it's irrelevant because I want to know about 600 Virgil. The judge never would make them prove their claim. It is not reasonably calculated to lead to the discovery of admissible evidence and is for the purpose of harassment. I'm harassing them because I want to know who owns 600 Virgil. They filed this cause under 600 Virgil. That's their cause of action. That I had complaint over the 600 Virgil. They got 10 affidavits that they signed stating 600 Virgil. After they stated they understood it was 700 Virgil. that I owned shows a whole list of documents, over 700, Virgil. All of these they filed in the record. They filed in the record. And when they filed it in the record, you asked if I objected. I said, absolutely not, Your Honor. Please put it in. I insist it all gets put in there because I know that it could be used for evidence even today. And then it said, plaintiff further objects to this interrogatory and that it seeks information that is equally available to defendant Hawkins. You wouldn't help me, Your Honor. I told you and I showed you. So what I had to do was, after they filed the fraudulently filed lien or claim against me because they gave a proposed order of final judgment, I billed them each about $1 billion and I filed it in the records. Without them having hearing on it or anything else, what they do was they change the proposed final judgment. They changed it to incorporate the billing that I put against them to get rid of that billing. I brought it before you. I filed it on December 14th. I think it was 2006, 2007, probably 2006, but it was filed December 14th. You called me in the very next day to have us come in for not a hearing, but just to listen to it. But then you did tell me you would hear it, and we never got around to it. So what I ended up doing was I went to the Attorney General of Texas, Greg Abbott. I went down there to Austin. I says, sir, it wasn't quite him. It was Mr. Woodstone or Woodsmith or something like that. And I told him and I explained everything. I brought the whole record down. I brought the whole record to Austin. We spent a couple hours together and he said, I can't understand how that occurred, Mr. Hawkins. I said, well, I don't either. I said, but something's got to be done. He says, yes. He says, it does. He says, what do you want us to do? I said, all I'm asking you to do, sir, is make the city of Abilene, since they think the litigation is done and over with, make them under penalty of law if they don't, because they've been denying me my right to public information for a long time. Tell them that they have to answer my questions concerning tax records, deeds, anything of that sort, utility bills, whatever. So he did. He wrote this letter to them. He said, hey, y'all, better go ahead and answer this man. So what the city of Abilene did on May 23rd, 2007, after you, and I did put a halt to all actions that were done in this court because I did challenge your jurisdiction, Your Honor. And I'm sure that you do understand and realize, according to the laws, according to sound law, rules of court, everything else, then once jurisdiction is challenged, then everything freezes. I know that the plaintiff is going to be saying, well, the thing is, your plenary power was over. But no, Your Honor, I came in on December 14th before your plenary power was over. I challenged your jurisdiction to sign a known fraud. So from that point on, until it was answered, plenary powers had been frozen. There's a stay on all things. It's as if this matter never went out of the court. But anyway, May 23rd, 2007, it says, Dear Mr. Hawkins, the city attorney's office has reviewed your request received May 10th, 2007. That's when they received my request for public information that they're going to answer. Now, please keep in mind, they filed in this district court a cause of action over 600 Virgil Street. The Attorney General is making them answer my questions pertaining to this. Listen to what they prove themselves a fraud. I show it right in the court, and the judge doesn't do a dang thing. You reptilians, I'm telling you, and you wicked and evil men and women. Judgment is coming. Start here. But anyway, May 23rd, 2007, it says, Dear Mr. Hawkins, the City Attorney's Office has reviewed your request received May 10, 2007. Now, that was way after my other request that they showed that concerning the guy at 911 addressing February 10th, 2004. Now, this is a letter, May 23rd, 2007. This is 3 years later, Your Honor. So I've been trying to get this information the best way I could because I couldn't get no help from the court. They weren't going to give me anything. They all filed a fraud. They knew what they did. That's why when I got them on the misappropriated public funds, they said, oh, Your Honor, well, hey, we don't want the $10,000 anymore. It looks like Mr. Hawkins won't be able to financially handle that anyway. So we'd like to drop the financial part, that we were going to make personal gains, to become wealthy over the fraud that we filed on Mr. Hawkins, okay? So this is now May 23, 2007. And it says the office reviewed my request dated May 10, 2007, and we will address the two issues that you have raised. Request number 1. All information be provided in a copy or by disclosure as to the location with access to records of all information pursuant to 600 Virgil Street, Abilene, Texas, from the day it was initially addressed by 911 Taylor County Addressing, or whatever name of that company or whatever it is that it does. Their response: please be advised that the City of Abilene does not have any information responsive to your request. That's why they wouldn't answer in this court, Your Honor, because they had no information about 600 Virgil, because it's a fairy tale. Just like I told you, I put my life on the line. I said, Your Honor, if you or anyone else can prove that I had anything to do with 600 Virgil, you can take me and that bailiff's gun down to the parking lot and blow my brains out for my due punishment. And I also told you in open court that I would admit to every sin, every breaking of any law that nobody answered to for the last 100 years. I would take responsibility for that too. My request number 2. My request for Public Information Open Records Act pursuant my second request herein is as follows. I request all information for the location of any titles, deeds, and or etc. Response: please be advised that the City of Abilene does not have any information responsive to your request. This here City of Abilene letterhead. It took me, now you see, 2007. It was 2003 when the case was filed. It took me 4 years to finally go to the Attorney General of Texas. I had to drive all the way out there to get this man to go ahead and tell these people, hey, look, litigation is over, guys. You can't withhold this information anymore. You got to give up your fraud. You got to let him see. So they wrote and said, hey, it's a fairy tale. Well, maybe we'll pick up here on page 20 in another one, because I don't want this to go an hour. So you see these frauds that they've done? It gets better when you see how they twist everything and how they defend one another, just like Enoch said they do against me. I love y'all. I hate your sins.